The transgender craze is growing and metastasizing in America and worldwide. Confusion is abounding. On Season 2 of Generation Indoctrination, we're bringing you the powerful audio version of the new ebook, Exposing the Gender Lie: How to Protect Children and Teens from the Transgender Industry and False Ideology. In the book, Summit Ministries President Dr. Jeff Myers and Christian Post reporter Brandon Showalter explore the diabolical nature of the movement and how to stop this ideology from continuing to wreak havoc. This is the introduction.
Exposing the Gender Lie: How to Protect Children and Teens from the Transgender Industry's False Ideology. By Jeff Myers, PhD, from Summit Ministries, and Brandon Showalter, The Christian Post. Introduction. I'm frequently asked why I focus so much on the nature of biological sex. It's because, in my view, this may be reality's last stand. If this undeniable fact can be denied en masse, then we become hostages to chaos. We simply cannot afford to lose our collective tether to reality. Colin Wright, evolutionary biologist. I'm not obsessed with gender. I'm obsessed with the preservation of a functional society. Ours will fail if we allow some to impose their personal fictions on others. Brett Weinstein, evolutionary biologist. Transgenderism has exploded across the world in the past decade, particularly in the West. The Williams Institute at the UCLA Law School reports that the number of young people identifying as transgender has doubled in just the last few years, and that 1 out of 5 people who identify as transgender are 13 to 17 years of age. The number of minors in America receiving a diagnosis of gender dysphoria tripled from 2017 to 2021, with more than 42,000 receiving the diagnosis in 2021. On the popular social media platform TikTok, #trans has logged 50.2 billion views as of this writing, having nearly doubled within the last year. Many people are disturbed by this. Few are as disturbed as they ought to be. What we face is an unprecedented coupling of postmodernist academic theory with an internet-fueled social contagion targeting vulnerable boys and girls who are struggling with their God-given sex. This has given birth to what we call transgender ideology or gender ideology, which in turn is fueling a medical and social scandal that ambushes our very understanding of reality itself. This is not a right versus left issue. The vast majority of Americans, Republicans, Independents, and nearly a majority of Democrats as well, think that the transgender movement has gone too far by encouraging minors to transition through drugs and surgery. According to an October 2022 Summit Ministries and McLaughlin and Associates poll. In a Fox News interview, transsexual activist Buck Angel agreed with these results, saying that things are accelerating in a way that seems too fast. In reference to the social media contagion that seems to be the transgender movement's primary accelerant, the British lesbian activist Kate Harris said, "Our major concern is that millions of impressionable children are watching these online influencers. It's no coincidence that the growth of TikTok coincides exactly with the exponential growth of children presenting with gender dysphoria." Even the gay neuroscientist Simon LeVay, whose research led to the claim that homosexuality is genetically heritable, has expressed skepticism about the transgender movement. An article in a leading LGBTQ publication quotes LeVay as saying, "We may be overly supportive of gender non-conforming kids, thinking that they might be transgender, so advocating giving them hormones or castrating them at an early age. We should always love our kids as they are, whatever, but don't tell them that their sexuality is a done deal before puberty." Critics of transgender ideology are predictably met with withering rebuke. They're labeled transphobic, hateful, and even criminal. The vitriol seems especially intense when the criticism arises from within the LGBTQ community. One activist called LeVay's remarks quoted above as beyond irresponsible, implying that such comments foster bullying and aggression. Tweets from singer Bette Midler and author J.K. Rowling expressing concern about the diminishment of womanhood were roundly condemned in forceful and often vulgar ways, even though both women have been longtime supporters of the LGBTQ movement. Yet what commentators debate about, the breakdown of women's sports, the eccentric demand that each of us select our own pronouns, or else, the unexpected influence of the TikTok social media platform, and the foisting of drag queen fetishism on unsuspecting children, these are but symptoms of a deeper problem that no amount of editorializing, whether scornful or admiring, can dismiss. To borrow an oft-repeated line from King Solomon, there is nothing new under the sun. Ecclesiastes 1:9. Gender confusion is not new. What is new in human history, however, is the unprecedented boosterism of this confusion through a perfect storm of culture-making institutions clamoring for attention, government bureaucrats opportunistically expanding their power, and a medical-industrial complex soullessly yearning for financial enrichment. As we will see, long before the public began noticing that something odd was going on in popular culture discussions of gender ideology, the battle for the high ground had long been won. Churches that adhere to a historic, orthodox, biblical worldview are among the few places where any dissent can be found. Our concern in this book is mainly about the impact of gender ideology on children, teenagers, and young adults. Because gender ideology is being taught in schools, and because of the ideological capture of the medical system, countless troubled young people have been brainwashed into a youth-onset delirium in which the denial of objective reality is seen as a commendable social good. Unlike other treatment modalities for issues such as addiction, medical professionals handling transgender treatment are told to encourage the patient's delusions, and if the patient is a minor, demand that the parents do so as well, or else. The natural flow of this highly choreographed treatment plan is the intentional infliction of disease through the off-label experimental use of puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones. Eugenic sterilization is not a side effect, it is a predictable outcome if treatment is carried out to its prescribed end. Many of these patients are now realizing that the horrendous diseases they have experienced because of this experimental treatment have permanently damaged their bodies without healing their souls. A growing number of them are finding their bodies irreversibly disfigured due to radically invasive and medically unnecessary surgeries. When faced with legal liability, doctors, hospitals, and pharmaceutical companies hide behind standards of care crafted by a handful of activists inside various medical associations, bereft of the kind of evidence we would expect to ground modern medical treatment. Impossibly short statutes of limitations practically guarantee that doctors are far removed from liability by the time serious symptoms present themselves, which is often a decade after treatment. There is a spiritual element as well. The debate over gender ideology has revealed a raging fury against the idea that human beings bear the image of God. Nowhere is this indignation more clearly seen than in the deconstruction of the very definition of male and female. Sincere and faithful Christians cannot remain on the sidelines. We must speak with biblically informed, compassionate wisdom. The philosophical and moral questions are complex. But what is at stake is whether we as a human society will be able to recognize truth, discern reality, and prepare the rising generation to live confidently as image bearers of God. You may wonder if this level of concern is warranted. We will present our arguments and you can decide for yourself. But our position is twofold. First, we think that concern is warranted because the issue of gender ideology is much bigger than the few people who are genuinely experiencing a severe incongruence over their biological sex. Second, we think the concern is warranted because the struggle over gender ideology is a gospel issue that has serious medical and psychological ramifications. The book of Genesis says that God made us male and female. Jesus affirmed this teaching. Biologically, it is undeniably true. If society persists in denying the importance of this fundamental aspect of being, we could very well be hostages to chaos and lose our collective tether to reality, to echo the words of the evolutionary biologist Colin Wright quoted at the beginning of this introduction. This book is a crash course on a thoroughly bewildering subject. If you had asked most people 30 years ago if they had ever met a person who sincerely claimed to be the opposite sex, few could tell you that they had. Maybe they would mention seeing what were once called transvestites at Mardi Gras, or a few troubled individuals who lived on the margins of society. But according to reputable polling, gender identity issues are now at the forefront of concern for young adults. Some polling says that 39% of young people claim to identify as LGBTQ. In addition to youth identifying as transgender, some are now saying they are non-binary, genderqueer, or another of an ever-increasing panoply of self-created gender labels. Healthline.com lists and defines 68 terms that describe gender identity and expression. Some have estimated that given the current ever-changing parameters of gender ideology, there could well be 3,000 different genders. If children are taken for therapy or medical evaluation, current standards of care specify that those identifying as other than their biological sex be treated by therapists as if they are, in fact, something other than their biological sex. Families are being told that if they do not embrace this treatment regimen, they are putting their child at risk of suicide and perhaps risking the forfeiture of their parental rights. Families are distraught and confused. Americans as a whole, according to polling by Summit Ministries, seem baffled by the whole issue. 2/3 of Americans say they do not think that transgender identity is a normal, healthy lifestyle. 72% say it should not be taught in schools. 90% say that gender alteration drugs and surgeries should not be performed on minors. Yet for the gender ideologues and the moneyed players who set this top-down systematic deconstruction of sex in motion, the instinctual clarity that most people have about the issue is misguided. The confusion that gender ideology creates is a feature, not a bug, of this entire project. If none of this makes any reasonable sense to you, well, that is precisely the point. At the root, we are dealing with a postmodern rejection of reality that is bound to fail. The question is, how many lives will be shattered before it does? We hope that as you engage the forthcoming pages, you will be equipped to address these tough and thorny themes with compassion for struggling people and with the uncompromised conviction that the truth must be proclaimed and defended. We will tackle why transgenderism is a medical and social scandal, discuss the history of gender ideology, show how this ideology twists language and distorts reality, and explore what a healthy and flourishing vision for human sexuality looks like in contradistinction to gender ideology. As we mentioned at the outset, this is not a left versus right issue, nor is it a science versus religion one. The biologists quoted at the beginning of this introduction are both atheists, but the truth is true, no matter who says it. We think these atheists are correct. We will present our evidence and reasoning in the following pages. If two atheists can summon the courage to speak with clarity against the tide of lies surrounding gender ideology, how much more then should those who follow the teachings of Jesus speak boldly? The Bible says that Jesus is the one who came to bear witness to the truth, John 18:37. The word for truth in the New Testament Greek means reality. Can we not be confident that in Jesus there is an antidote to what ails us, that his vision for human flourishing is worth pursuing? Do we not have a better, truer story to proclaim?
Thank you for listening. Go over to the show notes to see how you can download Exposing the Gender Lie, How to Protect Children and Teens from the Transgender Industry and False Ideology ebook, free from the Christian Post. And be sure to find out more about Dr. Jeff in Summit Ministries at summit.org.